So,
honorable managers of Outrigger Fiji Beach Resort up here in the Fijian Beach.
So basically, we're just going to do a whole Malaya, do the national anthem, I'll speak short and then if you want to say a few words just at the end, not beautiful, just
Our staff.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I was just very cognizant of the sizzling that's taking place and the smells that's coming from that, so I'll be very quick. But there's a couple of points that I did want to make. And, generally in this job, you have to be very neutral about things when you visit different properties because, everybody needs to feel that they all have equal treatment. But I have to say, and I have to go out on a limb, and this is actually from the heart, that the Outrigger in many respects outshines all the resorts that we have in Fiji for a number of reasons. For a number of reasons, many of which are actually obvious tonight. I don't think there's any resort in Fiji that has that level of community engagement that the Outrigger has. Some of them do have that, but they have it as a resort, and they may have one or two projects at the most. But at this resort, you have your different departments actually having their own community engagement, which is absolutely terrific and also absolutely very unique. So I think we should put our hands together for all of that. I think the other important point is that, as has been highlighted directly or indirectly, is the manner in which the staff actually engage with you, and the dynamics between the staff, I can see, is always very, very positive. Many of the resorts I've been to in Fiji, that level of interaction between the staff and that level of sort of affinity is not there. And I see that a lot, and I think that is driven very much by the culture that the management drives. And Sean, I have to say this, Peter did not pay me to say this, but I think essentially driven by Peter, the culture that he's been driving with his staff. And whilst there is that, the line of authority and all of that, but there is a very close relationship between the management and the day-to-day staff, which I think makes it very unique and very, very special. And we obviously want Peter to continue, notwithstanding the fact he's in Australia and he's going to lose tonight. We want him to continue in Fiji. Ladies and gentlemen, just a couple other points I'd like to make also. I'm very glad that the clam was mentioned. The ocean, mangroves, seagrass, and the other sort of life in the ocean has a much higher rate of sequestration of carbon than if you have, for example, forests on the ridges. Mangroves have a much higher rate of sequestration of carbon, so does seagrass fields, so do other plants within the sea. So this is why it's very important for us to be able to not only continue to ensure that the ecosystems within the oceans exist, but also that they actually are quite living, because it does reduce carbon at a much higher rate. It's very, very important for us to do that, and this is why we are very glad that in the Fijian presidency of the COP negotiations, or COP23 as it is called, we launched the Oceans Pathway as an initiative by the Fijian presidency, and we hope to get a lot of traction on the Oceans Pathway in the next 1 year, and indeed hopefully make it part of the formal negotiations. So we really look forward to working with the Outrigger. We have a number of partners, for example, the Australian government and various other international organizations, including on a bilateral basis like UK, have actually made commitments to work with us to be able to ensure that we develop what we call the blue carbon ecosystems. So that's one initiative, and again, the resorts will play a very pivotal role in that respect. we have also been informed that following the presidency of COP23, the rate of hits, as they say, on the Fijian tourism website has just spiked tremendously. The level of exposure, the type of attraction that the Fijian pavilion received in Bonn, where we had at least physically about 35,000 people coming through over a day or so, and it went on for 2 weeks. You cannot buy that type of publicity in any shape or form. And we have seen, and I was just talking to Mr. Kandi Tapu, he's saying that people from France and various other European countries actually know more about Fiji, more interested in Fiji. And I think it was a great honor for us, and indeed I think that honor was manifested in itself by way that our leadership, through our Honorable Prime Minister, we were able to carry the presidency of COP23. The level of the outcome in the formal negotiations for the COP23, which is the enforcement of the Paris Agreement by 2020, nobody expected the outcomes that we actually had at the end of COP23, particularly in the areas of agriculture and various other matters pertaining to loss and damage, etc., that we had the outcomes. The second part, of course, was the Fijian presidency had a huge focus on what we call the Grand Coalition. And the Grand Coalition is being able to work together, not just with state parties, but also non-state actors, which includes your civil society groups, your NGOs, your what we call the state governments. We had the governor of California there. We had Arnold Schwarzenegger there. We had, the French president there. We had various, Bloomberg, who was the former mayor of New York, was there. So we are now having, through this Grand Coalition, being able to develop numerous partnerships with various corporates also. It has now become not just a politically correct thing to do, but for many organizations, it is in fact the right thing to do, commercially even speaking, purely from a commercial perspective. So to be able to reduce your carbon footprint, to be able to engage and adopt and invent new technologies is actually a commercial imperative now. But it also makes sense because you actually have longevity of your businesses. It ensures that we have a sustainable form of development and sustainable living. So this, ladies and gentlemen, has really propelled Fiji on the international stage. We're also glad to say that a number of the initiatives that were announced by various countries, various organizations, the regional initiatives will all actually be hosted in Fiji, which means more people will be flying to Fiji, more technical people will come into Fiji. Will, of course, not benefit just domestically, but also as a region and economically also. So we're in a very good space, and we believe, of course, we need to carry on with this momentum. The same way we have the Grand Coalition we've seen at an international level, we are now seeing through Outrigger the kind of coalitions that we are developing locally. The school that Peter actually spoke about, Donua, of course, many of the schools, as I mentioned earlier on this afternoon when we had the opening, none of the schools actually would have opened if it weren't for faith-based organizations, if it weren't for communities that were set up, committees that were set up, various villages or people got together and started these schools. Over the years, they had been neglected. Government is now obviously providing free education, but organizations like the Outrigger, that as Peter said, once you start, it actually becomes a very engaged type of relationship that you have. And we cannot do it alone. No government can do it alone. And we encourage this type of engagement. So thank you for that. It helps us in what we have as an objective of creating a knowledge-based society. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attendance. I'd like to once again thank the Outrigger for this community initiative they have. I'd like to thank personally Peter, various other things that they do. Salesh, he mentioned about the schools. We need to be able to ensure that our students have much bigger smorgasbord of employment opportunities. Some of you may not know, but nearly 300,000 people in Fiji, which is about a third of the population, is below the age of 18. another 300,000 above the age of 18 but below the age of 14. So we have 69.4% of the entire Fijian population below the age of 14. So we need to be able to ensure that we provide opportunities for them, and those opportunities can not only be created simply just by governments alone, but also by the various partners we work with, and of course in this case, the Outrigger Hotel. I wish you all a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for the invitation, and we sure look forward to Fiji beating Australia. Inaka, thank you.